When you look at college football, is the early signing period now dominated by NIL and the portal? And do we need to do away with it? Is NIL and the transfer portal good for college football? Here's the thing. We don't need the early signing period. We don't need National Signing Day anymore. Let's have National Signing Day be every day. That's what you need in college football. And the issue really yesterday that we saw as the early signing period kicked off is we saw Oregon flip major recruit after major recruit away from other programs and into Eugene. And it's a bidding war now. And I wonder, Jake, is that good for college football? Because my inclination is to say this bidding war that is erupted in high school recruiting, specifically high school recruiting, I think is terrible for college football.
Well, I'm not ready to say that it's terrible for college football. I think that there are pros and cons for sure. I do think that there's this sense of hey, like it's the Wild West right now. I do think that's happening 100%. I think that you're basically saying, hey, my money bag is bigger than dude over here. Come play for me. Like that kind of feels like what it is right now. But you're still hearing kids say like, I chose this school because of the way it felt and the way it looked. And, like yesterday, Logan Fano on the show saying that, he chose to transfer because he felt like that gave him a better path to go to the league. Like these kids have their reasons, but I think the money, obviously, for some of these kids is the dominant factor. And I think people get really uncomfortable. People don't like that the student athlete is making a bunch of money. And I'm here to tell you, these are not student athletes. These are professional athletes, dude, who happen to have to get A grades to keep playing football for a year or 2 years or 3 years, right? Like it's football, then it's grades. And by the way, there's a whole staff of people who help them get those grades. So to me, I hate that we have this whole thing about, well, these guys shouldn't be getting paid, or these guys, we shouldn't have bidding wars, or we shouldn't have, it shouldn't be, NIL shouldn't be about the money. And it's like, it is about the money. That's the essence of NIL, allowing these guys who put their body on the line every week, who sacrifice so much physically to get paid, because not everybody goes to the league. Do we have to say that almost every day? I feel like not all these guys are going to the NFL. So I'm a big advocate for it. I say, hey, while you can strap it up and put the pads on and get out there and hit guys and do your thing, I hope that you can make some money on that. Like making $100,000 as a college football player for a couple of years, that's pretty awesome money before you have to go, to Adobe and work the rest of your life. You know what I mean? So to me, yeah, are there some negatives to it? Does it need to be reeled in a little bit? Sure, a little bit, but I don't think it's bad to be bidding over these kids or paying these kids, certainly, because I think they need it.
I don't think it's bad to pay kids. What I think happens is this situation with Oregon. Like if you look at the flipping that Oregon did, and you look at the fact that, oh, by the way, they only finished 13th in the country. Mm-hmm. Oregon had, inarguably, its best class ever. It's not close. But you look at some of the names on this list, and you look at the fact that they flipped kids from, let's say, Notre Dame, right?
Yeah.
You flip a kid from Notre Dame on the last day. You're doing that, in my opinion. You are doing that by paying them. And that, to me, is a problem. I mean, to flip Navosad from Baylor in the final hours before this kid's going to sign a national letter of intent, that's a problem for me.
Why?
Because I don't think it's ethical to say, oh, well, hey, you know what? We didn't get any other quarterback in the country. We'll pay you $1,000 more a week than Baylor was going to pay you. Like, to me, that's just not. But why? That's not ethical.
Why is that in a world that is capitalistic, right? Like our country is built on capitalism. Why is it that we don't like this at the college level? Is it because they're, quote, student athletes?
No, it has nothing to do with it. It has to do with the fact that Phil Knight has more money than Booster in, Virginia, or Booster in Los Angeles, or you're buying your team now. And if we're going to do that, if that's how we're going to recruit kids out of high school, let's just do away with amateur stuff. Let's just do away with having to go to school and call it AAA football, because that's truly what it is. And the frustrating part for me is that I feel like the kid always comes second. Nobody thinks about what happens, because just because you're a 5-star recruit doesn't make you an NFL talent. It does not. Where you go to school has just as much to do with, and this is my opinion, with your development. Like, your path to the NFL is directly related to who is coaching you in college. There's no doubt about that. And when you look at Jackson State yesterday, and you look at who is going to Colorado because of Deion Sanders,
yeah,
and you see that Travis Hunter, the number 1 recruit in the country last year, who went to Jackson State and is now going to Colorado, he's just following the paycheck, man. Nobody's thinking about what happens if that kid doesn't make it in the Pac-12. What happens if that kid never plays it down in the NFL?
But what happens to the kid if he never plays, right? Because I think it's a great point. If he never plays and he doesn't make it in the Pac-12, wouldn't you rather, like, I would rather have the kid at least make the money. Like, I'd rather have the kid at least benefit from that. Like, because before NIL was a thing, what was the path? Well, I got to have the grades, and then I got to build a relationship with the coach, and I got, you have to do these.
It used to matter that you set your life up for after college. That used to matter. That's what nobody talks about. Nobody wants to talk about all the kids every single year on National Signing Day who never play a down of college football. Nobody wants to talk about the kid that gets hurt. And this is really the crux of my argument. You have, and it is largely, underachieving kids academically who are on the line of getting into a school, and they get in because they're a football player.
Right.
And they don't have something to fall back on because they're not able to compete academically at Stanford or Oregon or UCLA or USC. They're not able to compete academically at Utah and BYU, but they're playing football, and then when their football days are over, now what? Like the guys who delivered my Bowflex, my Peloton tread, were former football players in the state of Utah, and they never went anywhere. And now they're delivering Peloton treadmills and setting them up. And the one guy couldn't even kneel down because his back is bad from playing football. That's what I think about on days like National Signing Day. I think about the kid who didn't get an education because he wasn't able to compete academically, should have never been there. And I'm not trying to rain on everybody's parade. I'm truly not. And I know that I'm being Danny Downer right now and negative Nathan and all that stuff.
I guess my question just is, like, I completely get where you're coming from, and I empathize with the guys who have this huge announcement on National Signing Day and, like, hey, I'm this huge deal. And then, 3 years later, you find out they're delivering Peloton treads. Like, how does that even happen? Everyone's got a story. Everyone's got a thing that happened to them that made them take a left turn that wasn't what they expected. But I guess my thing just is like, if that left turn is going to happen, I'd rather this kid have pocketed 150 G's, let's say, over 2 or 3 years or whatever the timeline is. Because I agree. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about the kid who's got a bad back and can't function. Nobody talks about the fact that, these kids can barely scrape by on a C average, right? We talked all about one of the conversations we had, I think it was like a month ago, we talked about the fact that with the Pac-12 and USC and UCLA leaving, George Kliavkoff made this big deal about how, student athletes, and they're not going to have study time and travel. And it's like, dude, there are whole teams in place to make sure that these kids get the grades they need to get. So the question for me in this conversation is, okay, if this kid is able to be a big enough deal to have National Signing Day, I have to think there's a way for them to get by academically. And the tough part is, it is true. Some of these kids have no business being at Oregon, right? I can say myself, I have no business being at Oregon. I am not that smart, right? I have no business being at Stanford. I'm not that smart, right? I know my lane. I'm not a football player, though. I'm not trying to get to the league. So it kind of puts these kids in a tough situation. But I just come back to like, all right, cool. Like, if that's the reality of the situation, I guess I'd rather them get paid than not get paid. but it's kind of this tough thing. Like, you don't, like, every kid's story is different. So I guess where I come down on it is I'd rather them have the money if they're going to be the guy that hurt his back and is delivering treads 3 years from now,
Yeah, now that we're done being virtuous about ethics and whatnot in college sports, I just think that when I look at Oregon this year, I say, hey, they outcompeted everybody. And now when you look at the money that's being thrown around, the SCs, does Utah have any ability to compete with Colorado at this point? Does Utah have any ability to compete with certainly Oregon, USC, UCLA, for however long they're in the conference? Does Utah have the ability to compete with those schools? I would tell you they don't. And Utah had a fantastic class, 4th in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Hey, that's all well and good. But you look at what Oregon did, flipping Peyton Bowen from Notre Dame was a huge, huge flip. Peyton Bowen is a safety that is a stud. And you look at some of they took kids from Ohio State. They took a kid from USC. They took a kid that's been committed to LSU since May. That's money. That's what that is.
Yeah,
That's Uncle Phil stepping up with a box of Jordans full of $1,000 bills.
But I feel like that's the world we live in. If you take a step back and we get out of college athletics, I very much feel like that's the world we live in. We live in a world where if you have money, you're the guy. If you don't have money, you're not the guy. And that's the tough part.
Right, but that doesn't make it a good thing. That doesn't mean that it's a good thing.
Yeah.
To me, you have to rein in the guys who are running around with their revolvers and their 10-gallon hats and just spraying money all over the street to get the best kid to come to Oregon.
Uh-huh.
I think if a kid is, in my opinion, if a kid is committed to a school, you shouldn't be able to reach out to him. You look at what the UTSA coach was talking about. I think it was UTSA.
Yeah, it was.
Was talking about how all these other schools were coming in and poaching their players. That's what the money has done to the game. I think there needs to be reform.
Mm-hmm.
I do. Now, having said that, Oregon by far, and it wasn't close, absolutely positively dominated the Pac-12. But one of the other conversations I think we need to have today is where is the Pac-12 in national recruiting? Because I think when I look at the composites and I look at who is what and where and how all this played out, boy, I don't think that you can go very far without recognizing that Alabama and Georgia and Texas A&M and Ohio State and Texas and Penn State and Notre Dame and Oklahoma, the true blue bloods of college football, still dominate college football.
Yep.
And if you look at Oregon, the top team in the Pac-12 is 13th in the country.
Yeah. To put things into perspective.
Behind LSU, North Carolina, and Clemson. And if you ask Dabo Swinney,
right,
Dabo got a whole lot of help from the dude upstairs.
Get through it, and for me, we built this program on NIL. We really did, and it's probably different than what you're thinking, though. We built this program in God's name, image, and likeness, and that's how I look at it.
What do you think of that
program?
What do you think of that?
Dabo is hilarious, number one, for saying that. I think it's terrible, but I think it's hilarious. Number two, I think that Dabo at Clemson is try-hard guy because he's been able, when Trevor Lawrence was there, he was able to get to the college football playoff and do some things, and now you haven't been the same team. But now you want to stand up there and say that you built your team in God's name, image, and likeness, and that you're holier than thou. When clearly you're not holier than thou, your money bag just is kind of deep.
Yeah. I think that when I look at, and this is just my opinion, I think Dabo Swinney is that guy. I think Dabo Swinney is that guy that wants to tell you Jesus Christ recruited
In
his
God's name,
image
and likeness.
and not like Jesus Christ recruited that safety to Clemson.
And that's how I look at it.
We built this program on
Program.
bro. Like it's Dabo Swinney is an ambulance chaser.
Yeah, totally.
And don't get me wrong, I like Dabo. I've interviewed him a million times. Super nice guy.
Yeah.
But this, to me, this is just so far over the top.
In God's name, image, and likeness.
We
You did
get
not.
it. We
You-
get
so
it.
wait, let me get this right. When your defensive tackle in the college football playoff, Dexter Lawrence, had his little suspension, did Jesus Christ put the needle in his arm, or was that you?
In God's name, image, and likeness.
It's college football. Trust me when I say college football programs are not run like a church. They're run like a prison.
Program.
Right? It's not this is so, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
This is classic Dabo.
I don't
dude.
buy it. I don't buy it for a second. The guy is just so awkward.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
Yeah, I mean,
You know,
I
like-
think he just he ambulance chaser. It's a perfect way to describe
That's
him.
exactly
because
what he is.
Yeah, because he's going to Dabo's going to disappear for 10 minutes, and then he's going to come back, and he's going to mention God and we're holier than thou, and everything's amazing, and then they're still going to get their ass beat by Nick Saban in the SEC. So to me, it's like it was incredible, it was funny, but it is classic Dabo.
But by the way, to bring this back home, did anybody notice where BYU finished in the composite of the 12 teams that will make up the Big 12? They finished 10th. They had a pretty good class, right? They had a pretty good class. They finished number 2 among independents, only behind my R&We, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Right.
And they still finished 10th out of the 12 teams that will make up the Big 12. That's how steep the hill is.
Yeah.
And you look at that, they have one 4-star recruit, no 5s.
Right.
And they have a bunch of great 3s. And again, I will also tell you, just out in front here, I don't believe in 3s, 4s, and 5s. And you can play football and we can see the developmental cycle for you, or we can't. Like there are so many programs that recruit 3-star guys and turn them into 5-star NFL players. It's beyond comprehension.
Right.
Having said that, like your top recruits are not going, they're not going to BYU yet. And that's going to be something that you're going to have to fix.
Well, and I wonder what the hierarchy at BYU thinks of NIL and the money bag and the Wild West. Like, you have to be that way to win right now because we can sit here and talk about regulation and reeling things in and making sure that Buddy and his bag of money aren't walking down Main Street just, shooting the coupon gun everywhere. But that's what it is. That's what it is. So to me, the only question really is, hey, are you about it or are you not? And I don't know. Like, clearly BYU did a pretty good job, right? Utah did a phenomenal job. But in comparison to other schools, it's just kind of it's not like, well, you did what Oregon did.
But by the way, the good news is another Kafusi is coming to BYU.
Well,
so you feel good about that you still have a Kafusi in the program. But in all seriousness, you look at the names, on this list, and you quickly realize that this is a team that like Jackson Bowers is a really good tight end, from Mesa, Arizona.
Yeah.
He is by far your best prospect in this class, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's a kid that I think can play right away. Now, Isaac Rex is coming back, but that's a really good recruit for them.
Yeah, well, and I think that this whole thing around Jaron also matters in recruiting because if you're not going to have a good quarterback situation, that's going to hurt your ability to recruit. But if Jaron is indeed coming back, that's probably helping you get kids from Arizona or California or hell, even Florida if you're really trying to work hard. Like, so that's why I say at some point we need the Twitter post saying that Jaren's coming back.
Well, but I also think you look at a kid like Ryder Burton from Springville. I mean, that's a kid that projects to be a starting quarterback at BYU, but so did Jacob Conover. And I think it's interesting, this Keaton Slovis story at BYU, where Keaton Slovis has apparently said, yeah, I'd like to come to BYU, but you haven't heard anything because I think they know that Jaren Hall's coming back. And I think overwhelmingly, if without doubt, if Jaren Hall comes back, Keaton Slovis isn't coming to Provo.
Right.
I mean, that makes absolutely no sense.
Facts.
So you need the portal and you need recruiting to get you quarterback depth. But if you look at positionally how BYU ends up yesterday, it's overwhelmingly offense. And, Siale Esera from Timpview, I think, is a huge get because you have got to find a way to get after the quarterback on this team. You are, in my opinion, two things about edge rushers in college football. It's a quick route to the NFL, but they're awfully difficult to find. And the last couple of years, BYU has not had a premier edge rusher that can get to the quarterback, and it's really hurt their defense.
Well, and I don't think you've also had a DC that's willing to send guys to the quarterback, right? And I think that change with Jay Hill is going to be very noticeable. And I think that's why you're going to see athletes added to this defense. I mean, you need to have guys that can play multiple positions, that, you need to have that defensive end that's not the big lumbering defensive end, but the guy that can play, defensive end or maybe a little outside linebacker too, depending on the situation and what kind of scheme you're running. So to me, I think that Jay Hill has talked a lot about, hey, we're going to be an aggressive defense. And that's why you're seeing them add guys like that who are top end athletes who maybe need some development, but clearly you can see the path.
Yeah, and I also think if you look at, and this is just historically anyway, when you look at the way that these teams are put together now, it's transfer portal. I mean, it is the transfer portal, in my opinion, is far more important than NIL money in recruiting. That NIL money, in my opinion, needs to be overwhelmingly spent on the transfer portal because when you are BYU or Utah, you have to win in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
There's just no doubt about that. And I think you're seeing BYU winning running backs in the transfer portal is a big flipping deal. That's a big deal because you have to find a way to restock your running back room. You have to find a way to do that, and you got to find a way to keep them healthy.
Yeah.
But I think specifically for this period in time, I think you got to get rid of the early signing day. I just don't know why you need National Signing Day. I don't know why you need it.
I don't think it's a neat
thing. It makes no sense.
I just think it's what they've always done, and so they just keep doing it. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's many things that can be reformed. I mean, obviously, the college football playoff setup has been reformed a little bit. I think things like National Signing Day can be eliminated now if you're going to continue down this path of NIL and transfer portal. Like, because the truth is, these kids are already signed. It's just not official until they put ink to paper. But I don't know. A lot of me feels like this is all just, it's very gimmicky out of college football. It's very like game playing, behind the scenes, backroom stuff, and so we get to just see, oh, this kid signed there and that kid signed there, and Dabo gets to talk about God, and you know what I mean? Like, and so I think if you're going to reform college football, there needs to be more structure added and more guidelines that need to be created. And by the way, enforcement is really all that matters, because you can create all this stuff, but you don't have enforcement. Who really cares? By
the way, let's switch gears and talk Utah recruiting real quick, because I think this class is spectacular. I think what Kyle Whittingham and company did up on the Hill for National Signing Day or Early Signing Day, whatever you want to call it, is nothing short of spectacular. And if you look at their, from Spencer Fano, who, obviously we had Logan on the show yesterday, and they talked about wanting to play together. He's a Timpview kid. He's an offensive lineman, and he is absolutely a monster. And I think that's huge. I think the Hunter Clegg signing out of American Fork, he's an edge rusher. That's a guy that went to went to Utah because he wants to play in the NFL, just like Logan talked about yesterday on the show. They develop edge rushers at Utah. And I think getting Hunter Clegg on paper is huge. I think getting CJ Blocker out of Texas, the corner, is a massive, massive get for this because now you're becoming a pipeline of DBs as well. And I think you look at some of the DBs that they got. Smith Snowden, obviously from Lehigh, is a huge get. You add him with Blocker. You add him with just so many of these kids. And I know I'm going to butcher his name. I practiced it last night. I can't say it correctly, but the Fano Imoana, Brock Fano Imoana,
pretty good. That's pretty good.
Safety out of Hawaii, I think, is a huge get for them. Hawaii. I just look at what they put together defensively, and I don't know how you could have done better than Utah did. And that's not even the transfer portal.
Right.
That's just signing day.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know how they continue to do it. That your top two signees are offensive tackles, prospects at tackle, is unbelievable. And they're both 4-star tackles. And the dichotomy, again, and I think this matters, the dichotomy of location. When you look at Provo, Gilbert, American Fork, Texas, Kansas, California, Dejon Stanley out of California, Florida for Michael Mitchell, the running back. Again, Snowden from Lehigh, Mission Viejo, Corona, Sonora, Hawaii, Texas, Idaho, Mississippi, again, Hawaii, Las Vegas, Florida. Utah's got national reach now. And it's why this team is winning back-to-back Pac-12 championships. It's why this team is now starting to compete at the top of the conference on a regular basis. And then you look at Logan Fano coming in, and you have a lot of expectations for this defense to pick up right where they left off. I think this was an absolute positive, dominate kind of mentality out of Utah.
Yeah.
In recruiting, and the transfer portal has been very good to them as well. I mean, this was absolutely a win in the state of Utah for Utah.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything you want, and I think that, as usual, Kyle Whittingham does it flying under the radar, and he has his way about it. But I there's no other way to say it. They did a great job. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's as simple as it is.
Yeah. By the way, I also want to touch back on a story we talked about last week here on the Monty Show. Mitch Harper last night.
Yeah.
Interesting tweet.
Uh-huh.
Did you happen to see what Mitch Harper tweeted? That the Royal Blue Collective is coming to BYU.
In God's name, image, and likeness.
And that you're going to wear that dropout. It's just so uncomfortable.
And that's how I look at it. It's
just so uncomfortable. But the Royal Blue Collective is coming to BYU, as we talked about last week. You can check my Twitter. We tweeted over the weekend about the fact that this collective was going to have a baseline war chest of $2.4 million, and that every football player was going to earn $30,000 a year from the Royal. I was told it was the Royal Collective, whatever they're going to call it. But this collective is coming to BYU, and I think it's a big deal when you look at NIL collectives. $30,000 isn't nothing to a high school kid. I think when you can say to a kid, hey, you're getting a minimum of $30,000 here, that's a big get. That's a big win.
Yes.
For BYU. And BYU has for as fast as they got out of the blocks in the NIL game, they've really struggled, in my opinion, to keep that going. And if this Royal Collective is able to really drive that forward, and what it is, it's a group of donors and supporters, boosters of the BYU athletic program, and it is across the program, that are going to put money into a pot to support BYU athletics. And that's exactly what you need, because you're losing guys like the Fano brothers. If the Fano brothers knew they were getting $30,000 each per season, it's probably a little more difficult to transfer to Utah. I don't know what they're getting at Utah. Maybe I'm wrong. but I think that it's significant.
Yeah.
It is significant. So, I think the NIL game and the transfer portal game at BYU's been significant. I mean, you lost, you lost two big names, including Clark Barrington, who committed to Baylor yesterday. You lost Campbell Barrington. You lost
I think the
Keenan
portal.
Peely,
The portal has just made this whole thing where it used to be before the transfer portal and NIL were linked and became prolific like this, that every year you'd always have attrition. You'd always have turnover. That's the nature of the beast.
Yes.
Whether it's college football, a business, whatever, there's always attrition and turnover. But now it's obviously been taken to another level. And so I feel like it's forced BYU's hand a bit, because we've told you that BYU's mid-level money machine department is struggling. There are certain issues, there are certain dysfunctions that are not allowing them to be productive, and that is basically holding back what they can do in certain areas.
Well, when you see guys like Keenan Peely going to Tennessee, and you see the Barringtons going to BYU, and you look at some of the places that these kids are going, whether it's Tate Romney and Jacob Conover going to Arizona State, whether it's Dallin Holker being a complete fool, in my opinion, going to Colorado State, Logan Fanos going to Utah. Again, Keenan Peely is going to Tennessee.
Yeah.
You look at where these kids are going. They're not going to Poughkeepsie State. They're leaving BYU. Keenan Peely is a stud. He's leaving BYU to go play in the SEC.
It's Division I football!
You're losing these guys. You're losing the Barringtons, who you're going to now see in the Big 12, to Baylor. Right? Why are they leaving? How much are they getting? I mean, that's the stuff that we need to find out now. And again, if you're just tuning in, Max Tooley is going to join us 2 hours from right now on the Monty Show. He announced last night that he is in fact staying in Provo.
Yeah.
And that's a big boost for the linebackers, even though, again, I tell you, Max Tooley's a safety. We'll talk to him about Jay Hill, but we'll talk to him about, did he explore the transfer portal? Was that something that he looked at? Because I think it is a really fascinating question about whether or not he had options.
I wonder what Max Tooley thinks of the transfer portal, just generally speaking. I mean, if you're a football player right now, if you're Max Tooley, a stud linebacker, probably a safety at the NFL level, what do you think of the transfer portal? If the transfer portal is as real as it is BYU still the proper route? Well, for Max, clearly it is, right? Because he chose to stay. But for the Barrington brothers, it wasn't. And from some of these other guys, it wasn't. So that's what I find so interesting. And to our conversation earlier, I don't think enough people ask these kids this question. Where are you at on the transfer portal, generally speaking? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Is it ruining football? Is it the best thing that's ever happened? That's what I'm curious about, how your average or above average guy thinks of it.
Well, we'll ask Max Tooley about that at 8:30. All of our college football talk, including BYU and Utah, presented by our friends at Barbecue Pit Stop, bbqpitstop.com. We are just 3 days away from Christmas now, friends. No better place to finish off those stocking stuffers or Christmas shopping than at Barbecue Pit Stop in Logan, Layton, Lehigh, St. Jeezy. Down in the St. George area.
By the way, we're seeing some people at Jack in the Box tomorrow. Just saying.
Nice. They're also in Salt Lake City and Murray on State Street, right across from the mall. I'm telling you, you're a customer for life when you walk into a Barbecue Pit Stop, because they're just good dudes to do business with. They're all local franchises. They are entrepreneurs. They work hard to make sure that every customer is taken care of. By the way, all of the Barbecue Pit Stops now have meat counters in them, so you can get your wings, your briskets, your roasts, your steaks, your chops at Barbecue Pit Stop. And you also know, as soon as you hear the name Barbecue Pit Stop, yeah, you're getting the best equipment in the business. There's no doubt about that, whether it's a Traeger, a Big Green Egg, a Yoder, Camp Chef, whatever you need equipment-wise for your pellet smoker to your propane grill, Barbecue Pit Stop's got it. By the way, I would tell you to get into the pellet grill business, because you plug that thing in, you fill the hopper with pellets, and you're smoking whatever it is you want to be smoking right now. It is lovely. It is a year-round business. I'm telling you, you put a brisket on the smoker for Christmas, the whole neighborhood knows about it.
Yep.
And it's spectacular. The end product is just superior to charcoal briquettes or propane, in my opinion. I am no longer a propane guy. I am 100% a pellet smoker guy on the Traeger Ironwood 885. And by the way, you can also shop online at bbqpitstop.com. You can chat with them online. There's a little chat feature there. Make sure you tell them you heard about it on the Monty Show, your guy gift-giving headquarters for the guy in your life, Barbecue Pit Stop. In Logan, Layton, Lehigh, St. George, and our good friends in Murray. All right, let's get your comments in here on NIL and the transfer portal. Cody Strickland says, morning, guys. Kid will be here next Wednesday.
Wow.
I won't be able to watch live shows for weeks.
Come on, man. Come on. It's not like you have anything going on.
Okay, well, listen, Cody, make sure you hit the like button. We've had almost 300 people watch the show now, and we only have 20 likes. So let's go. Hook it up. Watch when you watch our show, please do hit the like button because it does help the show grow. And let me update you. We're trying to get to 9,000 subs in the next week.
Right.
In the next week. And right now we are at 8802.
Okay.
198 to go.
The countdown begins.
We are at 8802. Just 198 subscribers to go. So that's awesome. And we do that by getting thumbs up. When you guys like the show, it pushes the show out into the YouTube algorithm. It really helps the channel grow.
Yes.
So if you could hit the like button, that would be fantastic. Cody, good luck with your new addition to the Strickland family. Kurt Myers, what's up? Teddy Wayman, you stud. Neville93, how are you? Kurt Myers says, the portal and NIL have ruined bowl games. Fans want to see their stars when they play for large sums of money to travel and buy tickets. Well, I think it's an interesting point because I think a lot of guys are not playing in bowl games.
Right.
I mean, if you look at Jaron Hall, Max Tooley, Harris LaChance, the guys who didn't play in New Mexico, some of them are getting ready for the NIL, some of or for the
NFL.
Yeah, the NFL Combine, thank you. Some of them are transferring, some of them are injured. But for various reasons, a lot of stars did not show up in New Mexico for BYU. It's an interesting point. It's a very, very interesting point. Kurt Meyer says, put luxury taxes on college sports. I think there's going to have to be a spending cap at some point because you can't just have Phil Knight swoop in and spend as much money as you like on NIL. I think it just doesn't work that way. Barfing Chickens says NIL and the portal are so far the best thing that have happened for the sport's competitiveness, but yeah, it needs to be more regulated. And Barfing Chickens, I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
I think both sides of that. Josh Levern, NIL is great for players, good for some schools, not good for college football in the long term. I agree. Let's see. Simon 2077. Monty has a good point. Well, hey. One they want. Exactly right. K-State flipped a tight end from Colorado, but he didn't want to play for Neon Dion. Interesting. Provo Cougar fan says, I believe it's about 2% of college players make it in the NFL. The portal will make academic progress to a college degree more difficult. The player needs to think about life after football. None of them do. Because
their life isn't about anything else but football.
That's the problem.
Well,
and I understand there's no perfect world situation. There's no utopia, right?
Yeah.
But we have to at some point care about the kid's long-term viability as a man. And I don't think we do nearly enough of that. I think we probably do more of that at Utah and BYU than most schools do. But are you telling me that Deion Sanders thinks about anything other than these kids getting to the NFL? Because I don't believe he does. And I agree that academics are not for everybody.
Yeah.
I totally understand that. But if you buy into Deion Sanders and Deion doesn't get you to the NFL, is that your fault or is that his fault? Well, when you're 17, 18 years old and he's throwing a bunch of money at you, it's his fault. And we have, in my opinion, a responsibility to kids to make sure we're putting them in a position to live a better life. Because a lot of the kids that Deion Sanders is recruiting are from single-parent homes that are in poverty in big cities. That's who Deion Sanders is recruiting. And that may work at Jackson State. But what are you going to do when you get the inner city kid who's never had to focus on academics to a place like Boulder, Colorado, where chef school is hard, where now you actually have to write well thought out papers? Oh, well, they're going to have academic advisors write those papers. At some point, that kid's going to have to take a test. Or maybe they won't. Maybe they don't ever graduate. Maybe they're not eligible. I don't know. But at some point, you're going to have to figure out how to keep those kids eligible at Colorado, which is really difficult to do. So I don't think we think a whole lot about the academic and the long-term viability of these people as human beings. And I think it sucks. I really do. Coach says Oregon Collective entrance fee to join is $250K. Oregon State collective fee to join their collective is like $20. But that's my point. Oregon is a have. Oregon State is kind of have, but really we don't.
Right.
Right? Like that's what it is. Kenai Johnson, good morning. Simon says it's amazing what Big 12 championships will do for you. K-State normally hovers around 60th. This year they're 28th. And looking at K-State in the transfer portal, it is interesting, by the way, that you see the year that they had, and they lost more than they gained. By far, they lost more than they gained in the transfer portal. There is no doubt about that. And when you start looking at their recruiting and you start looking at exactly where they end up, yeah, they absolutely were helped by winning. There's no doubt about that.
Winning cures all.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that, but I just think it's really interesting. That's all I'm saying.
You know what's funny to me? We're sitting here talking about how we have issues or we have thoughts on NIL. What's funny to me? We don't do this in any other sport. You ever notice that? We don't. Pause for a second? We're so in love. We're so obsessed. We're so committed to football, a kid's game, that even when there's no football of relevance being played right now, this is what we do. We're too busy to talk about, any other sport, really. I mean, we'll talk about the Jazz today, but everyone wants to talk about this. And then we want to sit here and complain that, it's unfair that Phil Knight is spending his money. Well, is it unfair or is it the reality of the world? That's the problem. That's what I have issue with.
But I also think it's remarkable that K-State's able to go to Tuscaloosa and pull a recruit out of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. They're able to go to Stillwater, Oklahoma, and pull a recruit out of Stillwater, Oklahoma.
That's my point. That's what the system right now allows a program like that to do. Yeah, program. You know what I mean?
I mean, their composite 20, their score is 29th in the country.
That's what I'm saying. So is
pretty unbelievable.
Are we, you can't have it both. You can't have your cake and eat it too, right? Like you can't say, hey, there is like we have issues with the fact that there's basically just free spending happening. Spend as much as you want. Nobody's tracking it, right? We have an issue with that. But then on the other hand, when K-State's 28th in the nation, that's amazing. We need to have that. And it's like, well, how does a program like K-State get effective once regulation comes in? Because eventually it's going to happen.
Yep. Provo Cougar fan says when big programs, I love that you guys are saying programs. That's awesome. When big programs recruit a lot of 4- and 5-star players, there are not enough positions for them all to play. They become disenchanted and jump into the portal for greener pastures, which is exactly what guys want. I mean, what NIL has done and what the transfer portal has done is it's taken away the ability of a guy like Pervin Meyer to say to Kyle Gunther, I'm ripping your scholarship. You're done. I'm ripping your scholarship, loser. Because the kid will be like, all right, cool, I'm going to get in the transfer portal, coach. See you later.
It's probably different than what you're thinking, though.
Like, it's not how it used to be.
Yeah.
And, again, the days of the cowboy Pervin Meyer are over.
Yep.
You have to compete on a much larger scale now, financially, culturally, playing time. Like, you have to go and compete now. And I think that levels the playing field to a certain extent. Simon says a team only goes as far as the depth you have on the roster, certainly. Yep. And your ability to develop. And I just want to say, I hate when we put labels on 18-year-old kids. I really don't care about the star system. If you were a star in high school, okay, cool, great, you're a 5-star kid. All right, neat. how many 3-star recruits have turned into prolific players? A ton of them. The list is much longer of 5-star recruits who never did anything in college or pro.
Yeah.
So I just don't believe they mean it, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. What's up, Jeff Johnson? Good to see you, friend. Kyle J says the U of U, a.k.a. DBU. You're not even joking.
Yeah.
I mean, this recruiting class for Utah is stellar. It is.
It's what you want.
It's everything you want.
So that's what I'm saying. Just be careful what you wish for, right?
Yeah.
You have Kyle Whittingham operating, and we like what he's doing. He's doing a good job. Yeah, it's unfortunate that Jackson State can't compete with Oregon. But could they really compete anyway, even before NIL? Nobody knew who Jackson State was, with all due respect to Jackson State. Nobody knew who you were. You weren't competing for the college football playoffs. So, I don't know, man. I agree with what you're saying, but on the other hand, I'm like, dude, it's the reality of the situation. That's our world. That's how life is lived. That's precisely.
Oh, you're so virtuous,
you know what I
as
mean?
a millennial.
You know what I mean? It's the world we live in. Stop complaining, spend your money, and do your job. That's life, dude.
In God's name, image, and likeness.
Look, Dabo.
We built this program on NIL.
That's not. Dabo Swinney is just so uncomfortable. He's the guy that comes in and he actually, you know what? He holds the hug a little too long. That's who Dabo Swinney is.
He is.
He's that guy that just is he wants to hug you hello. He wants to hug you thank you. He gets a handful of ass when he hugs your mom goodbye. He's just that guy.
Yep.
By the way, we should care about the kid. You don't. I do. We should care about the kid. Anyway, the biggest stories in sports every morning on this program are brought to you by our friends at Quick Quack Car Wash. That's right. It's snowing and wet on the roads this morning in Utah. Please be careful if you're out there driving. But you got to get to Quick Quack Car Wash today. I'll be in Los Angeles 24 hours from now. I will be on my way halfway to St. Jeezy, and I'm stoked about it. And my car will look phenomenal because this afternoon I'm going to Quick Quack Car Wash in South Jordan at the District, and my car's going to come out looking amazing. And then we're going to trash it, and it's going to smell like burgers and farts, but that's fine. The point is, before all that happens, we're going to Quick Quack Car Wash because it's easy, it's quick, and I have a wash pass. $21.99 a month. I get their best wash package, and I can wash my car once or 1,000,000 times a month. It's totally up to me, but I only pay the same price, $21.99. That's the beauty of a wash pass at Quick Quack Car Wash. I get a smiling face. I don't have to stick my credit card into some box of a machine. I get a smiling face who says, hey, and you know what the best part is? They put your name in the system when you register. The guy always says, hey, Monty, how are you?
Hey, guys.
Doesn't know the show probably, doesn't know who I am, but I know when he puts my license plate in, it says Monty on it. He says, hey, Monty, how are you? Would you like a dashboard wipe? No, thanks. Why don't you save that? I have a cloth in my car that I carry around with me. All right, cool. Thanks. Go ahead and pull up. You pull into the tunnel. There's a guy who waves at you. He directs you in, sprays the front of the car, sprays the back of the car. Good to go.
Bada boom, bada bing. You know what I mean?
We're good to go.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's Quick Quack Car Wash. I love it. You're in and out in 5-7 minutes. The vacuums are free.
Yeah.
The towels to wash your car are free. It's remarkable at Quick Quack Car Wash.